Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about a product that I acquired quite a few weeks ago. It's not a new product, it's a product that's been out for a while. It was on Kickstarter about a year ago as the second generation. There was a prior unit, I believe, that was made, and then they significantly re-engineered the product and reintroduced it. It's the Benro Polaris electronic tripod head, which is basically designed as a product that'll do not just things like panoramas, time lapses, and focus stacking, but it also has an incremental module that will allow you to do astrophotography in a unique sort of way, because most astrophotography heads, trackers, etc., require you to do a fairly extensive amount of polar alignment. But in this particular case, you don't really have to do that, as it is kind of semi-automated and self-aligning. It has a very good go-to feature, though the database of the Astro units that are out there are fairly limited. But in the most part, I think that database is going to grow. But more importantly, you can actually put your own, astro coordinates and do any kind of alignment to any object out there in the night sky. So with that said, the unit that I'm referring to is really, in its fullest extent, a very interesting product. The Astro module is a separate module that can be removed, and in fact it is to be purchased separately. This is the main module. This is what will do your focus stacking. It'll do panoramas, etc., etc., etc. There is a small problem that I found, in that as photographers, we like to use heavy tripods that have a good base plate where you put a ball head on, or you put your video head. But in all cases, that the diameter of that base plate is quite large, not extensively so, but still relatively large, compared to a tripod with a center column, which I personally am not a fan of, where you can erase the center column and it has a small base plate that you can mount your ball head to, etc. If you're using one of those, clearly there is absolutely no problem. This unit will fit on there perfectly. If you want to mount it to a ball head, in the most part that too will work okay. But now you're carrying a ball head, you're carrying this, and you're carrying your tripod. You've got three elements, which may tend to make your kit rather bulky. So the problem that happens with this particular unit is that if you are to mount it the way it is supposed to be mounted, the base of the mounting section, which is Arca Swiss compatible, is higher than this knob, which is one of the motor knobs that allows the orientation of this particular unit to come into play. So as this unit will move, the rotation of this knob is critical, and if it binds, it's going to cause a drag on the motor. So if I was to take this and try and mount it to my tripod head, by the time I get barely 1.5, or even I should say 1 screw thread in place, this is already hitting against and binding against the top of my tripod's spider plate or base plate. So this is not going to be a good thing. Now I could clearly turn the unit on and have this thing oriented more upwards, giving it a little bit more clearance. But if I were to then turn it off, then clearly this will, get obstructed by the top of the tripod head and cause more issues. So in order to overcome that, what I found is that Benro does in fact make a riser, and this riser is called, or is actually called the GDHAD1. And if you were to take this and mount this to the top of your tripod head, your tripod plate, base plate, then you have enough elevation that has been created so that when you are going to rotate the screws thread of this particular Benro Polaris, the clearance is there and you are not going to end up with any binding situation or any obstruction, and thereby you now have your unit in position without this particular rotating, the motor rotator hitting any of the objects on the top of your tripod. So that's the first thing. Now, what I've done is I've put links to where you can get this on my affiliate or my associate links, and I do get a small commission, so just to let you know that is the case. Now, once this is mounted here, you now have your system ready to operate without any obstructions. Before I go on any further, I just do want to mention that I still have a few openings on my Tanzania and my Namibia workshops that are coming up in September this year, 2023. I have a few spots in both. So if you are interested, here are the featured links to both of those workshops, and I'd love to have any of you join, and be rest assured you will have an absolutely phenomenal time. I did Namibia this year, and you can see some of the images that I was able to get on my website and on my social media pages. Be rest assured you will be thrilled with what we will see on the trip. So with that said, the next thing that I do want to mention is that if you are interested in any particular aspects of the Benro Polaris, and if you would like me to create any additional videos, let me know. I do plan on doing some videos on how to do panoramas, multi-row and single, also to do some time-lapse with this, and to do some focus stacking. Those will be subsequent videos which I will create. Now, the next thing that I want to talk to you about is what this unit comes with. And what Benro provides you is a foot or a base plate, which is Arca Swiss compatible, that you can use to mount your camera to this particular unit. Let me turn this unit on and get it oriented in its correct position. As you can see, this knob has to rotate, and as it rotates and rises, lifts up into its what I would call semi-parked position, you don't want this to be hitting and rubbing against anything, because it's not going to be able to rotate. So whether you use the Astro module or you use your camera just to mount it on here, both the regular mounting plate as well as the Astro module mounting plate are fully Arca Swiss compatible. So in order to mount your camera to this, if let's say you're doing a panorama, you are typically going to want to mount your camera in its portrait orientation, not in its landscape orientation. So this is the landscape orientation. This would be the portrait orientation. So to get the maximum of doing a panorama, you want your camera in its portrait orientation. Well, the plate that Benro supplies only mounts to the threaded hole at the base of your camera. So the ability for you to mount your camera in portrait orientation is basically not there. If you are like me, and like lots of other photographers, we like to use an L bracket for our cameras, and we can then orient the camera either horizontally or vertically. If you are using a lens with a foot, of course, then the problem doesn't arise. But typically we are using wide-angle lenses for Astro work, we are using wide-angle lenses for landscape work. Then the ideal way to accomplish the orientation is to use an L bracket. And if you are using an L bracket, you want to be able to mount it in its portrait orientation. So you can get what's known as a nodal rail. Now, I don't know why they call it a nodal rail. It's really a rail that allows you to correct for and to establish the no parallax point. But anyway, it's known as a nodal rail, terminology aside. And what you can do then is actually use the nodal rail to mount your camera in any orientation that you want. But the other advantage of a nodal rail is that the newer nodal rails, mine is an old one which does not have any graduation, so I had to jury-rig a little, mechanism to record what the correct distances are. But if you have one that you buy now, you will get it with full graduations, and those graduations allow you to set your camera to the no parallax point oriented to your Polaris ball head, the Polaris electronic head. In order to do that, there are two things that you're going to be wanting to do. One is to find the center point of the Astro module, if you have the Astro module, and or to find the center point of your regular base plate and put some sort of a tape with a mark that establishes what that center point is. And once you have that center point established, then you can get the no parallax point, mark it on your foot, which is your nodal rail, and then when you are going to mount this to your ball head, all you do is slide it in, get it to the right mark, and then just lock it in place, and you are correctly oriented. The same thing goes for the Astro module, but for the Astro module, it's not the no parallax point that you are going to be using. For the Astro module, you want to be able to get your camera and lens at its balance point, so that as the Astro module orients the camera to the stars that you are tracking, there is no issue with weights or the need for counterbalancing, because this unit does not have any counterbalance like a lot of the Astro trackers do. So it is best to have your system properly balanced on the Benro Polaris, particularly for Astro work. So the way I do that is I use a gimbal head and mount the camera on the gimbal head and establish the balance point. Let me show you how I accomplish that. What I'm doing here is I'm going to take my camera with the nodal rail attached to it, make sure that it is correctly centered. So now, as you can see, that this is in fact balanced more to the camera side, and it's not perfectly in balance. So I need to move the whole unit forward, which I can do till I get to a point of good balance, lock it in place, and once it's locked in place, I know that this will stay at its balance point. And now I can use the center point marker and establish a mark on the nodal rail and get my orientation for the Astro module perfectly aligned so that I'm in balance. I'm not going to, the balance really is something that allows you to prevent any incremental drag on the motor mechanism so that you are not only just properly balanced, that the whole system can comfortably get the orientation for the tracking of the stars. So those are the two, little modifications that I recommend that you get if you want to use this in a sort of easy and, what I consider an appropriate way. And hopefully, this has been of some help. So with that said, two small items that you can acquire. One being the riser to allow you to mount the Polaris correctly and without any obstruction to your tripod head. The other is the nodal rail that will help you orient your camera in any orientation, whether it be horizontal or vertical, both for panoramas as well as for astrophotography. But more importantly, for astro work, it gives you a good balance point so as to not cause any undue stress on the Polaris motors. They are designed to carry a fairly significant amount of weight, but still anything you can do to help a motor mechanism is always a good thing. So with that, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this, please do give me a thumbs up. Do subscribe if you haven't already, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video, which will also be Benro Polaris oriented. I think I probably will do the next one on how to do panoramas, and then or maybe do one first on how to set the Benro up properly so that you can do astro work and anything else, and also then follow it up with panoramas and follow it up with focus stacking, etc. So with that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you the next time. Take care. Bye-bye now.